are Geekcentric, and you can be too. Love ya. Get home safe, guys. Peace.
Hello, I'm J-Law, but you can call me Justin, and welcome to the Geekcentric podcast and our special Behind the Geeks episode for Loki Season 2. If you're joining us for the first time, well, we are Geekcentric, a podcast covering the world of movies, TV shows, toys, collectibles, gaming, and all things Geekcentric. Joining me for today is no one. I am here by myself on the sacred timeline, introducing to you these interviews that I had the opportunity to conduct over the last couple of weeks for Marvel Studios Loki Season 2. As always, a huge thanks to our friends at Disney Studios Canada and by extension Marvel Studios Canada for setting up these interviews. We are always humbled and grateful at the opportunity to talk to anyone who works on anything that we love to watch. And Loki Season 2 has been so good. 4 episodes in, so we couldn't pass up the opportunity to chat with director Dan Deleeuw, a visual effects supervisor who is making his directorial debut in season 2 of Loki as the director of episode 2, and Kasra Farahani, who is actually the production designer for Loki season 1 and season 2, but is also taking on the reins as director for episode 3, which, again, both episodes are out now. You know how wild they are, so tons and tons of fun. On top of that, I had the opportunity to chat with Christine Wada. She is the costume designer for Loki season 1 and Loki season 2. And we actually chat about how her work marries so well with the work of Kasra Farahani, the production designer, to help build this world of the TVA and these different time periods to feel so rich with nostalgia. So it's a really great conversation. But that's enough from me. Let's get into these interviews. First, my interview with director Dan Deleeuw. Enjoy.
Hey, Dan. Welcome to the Geekcentric podcast. My name is Justin. Thank you for making the time to join us. I'm thoroughly enjoying season 2 of Loki, and you directed episode 2, which is actually your directorial debut, but this isn't your first time working with Marvel, as you were a visual effects supervisor and artist. How did the conversations begin about you stepping into the director's chair, and how did you land on Loki being your directorial debut?
Well, it's something that I wanted to work towards, for many years, and I was fortunate enough to work with the Russo brothers on quite a few films. And Winter Soldier, we were talking about how how Hydra could take over control of the helicarriers, and I had this really nerdy answer in terms of how it would work. But it got me into the room, and once I got into the room, what would be really cool is they got all those guns, and they would shoot at each other and blow each other up, and send them down over a river into a base, and it would flood. So I just kind of went crazy. Kind of my first time in the first chair for effects, and the producer was like, everybody's eyes were bulging at the heads, but the Russos loved it, right? So they're like, this guy's got fun ideas. So over the films, they gave me more opportunity, from film to film, to contribute ideas and design some of the sequences. And it was on Endgame that Joe said, well, we're going back for additional to help finish up Endgame. And he said, well, do you want to direct the additional photography? And I'm like, that'd be fantastic. So, going from there, I, started doing more second unit work. And then for Loki, I had gone and helped out in post-production on the visual effects. And that's where I met Kevin Wright, the executive producer. And I would always talk about story about, what's happening here. And he's like, hey, this guy's interesting. So then they invited me into season 2.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. And it seems like, you kind of were working towards that in a lot of ways. And given the opportunity and people around you recognized your interest. As you mentioned, given your past, how did your background in visual effects inform your approach to storytelling and character-driven moments? Are there transferable skills there that you find that you're bringing into the director's role?
Well, I think a lot of what we did with the sequence design, with the films with the Russos, you fail if it's just a fight. You fail if you aren't telling part of the story and making the fights emotional. And so, in terms of Civil War, you try to pit the characters against each other that had, kind of the grudge, that had something, a score to settle. And you saw that with Endgame. And so a lot of that part of the storytelling was, was the beginning, I think, of like my path. I think that, the skill set, you're working with artists, you're working with actors, with visual effects, I would always have an idea of what I wanted, but then I would always give the artist room to come up with an idea. And it's something that sometimes they'll surprise you. And it's like, wow, okay, that's really great. I didn't think of that. And a lot of times you work in concert. And it's the same way that transfers, I think, working with, everyone in the different departments on a show and, with the actors as well. You want to give them the space that they can be, creatively free to explore their characters and make sure that, what their characters are doing are honest to what they think their performance should be.
Yeah, it's part of being like collaborative in the process, right? It's definitely having that space to do that. My last question as I wrap here, we see Brad living his best life in another timeline. If you had a temp pad and you could just vacation in the past anywhere, where would you want to go and why?
Well, it's one of those things where you're like, growing up, it was always, keen on the Robin Hood movies and things like that. So like, you're like medieval Europe, it seems like a fun place to go, but I think as soon as you landed,
you'd regret it immediately, right?
Yeah, like, all right, where's the temp pad? Open that back up. We got to go.
Awesome. Dan, thank you so much for taking the time. I look forward to seeing what you do next, my friend.
All right, thank you very much.
Next up is my interview with Christine Wada, costume designer on Loki. Hey, Christine, my name is Justin. Welcome to the Geekcentric podcast. How are you doing today?
Very good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm absolutely excited to chat with you about your role on Loki, being costume designer for the latest season. Because one of my favorite parts of the show from season 1 to season 2 is the world of the TVA. And that is so beautifully represented and captured in the production design and the costume design. So I wanted to know, how did you collaborate with the production design team to ensure that the costumes in Loki aligned with this retro futuristic style of the series, creating a very cohesive and visually consistent world for the audience?
Well, I think you nailed it. It was a collaboration, and it started with the pages, with the script, Michael Waldron footprint with Mad Men meets Blade Runner, and Kasra and I definitely spent a lot of time together and going over things together, and incredibly same with the director. We had a lot of similar references. I just remember one of the very first meetings, all of us are heavy research people and love a lot of reference, and we all had Brazil in our reference boards, and I think we all had a love of analog and trying to be as practical as possible and trying to let the characters really come through. And I think Kasra and I just talking about the color palettes and being very connected that way. I think it really allowed the audience to really sink into the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. It was, again, one of the things that I absolutely adore about this series is the consistency with that and the commitment and the intent, from the color palettes to the production design to the way the costumes there's such a marriage between the two that helps bring this world to life, and it's just done so well. Now, I did read that that I believe Ke Huy Quan actually had some input on his costume this time around as OB. Is that true?
He really did want to be able to explore patches. We designed so fun to have that resource of designing so many different patches kind of based in that early mid-century vibe. We didn't obviously get to use them all, but it was a nod to Key.
Well, I wanted to ask in regards to that, like, were there any other actors or any other performers that had some input on their costume, and how do you find a way to kind of collaborate with them as well to kind of, still keep the consistency of the overall vision?
I think the beauty of working on these Marvel projects, or actually just doing your due diligence as a costume designer is really creating a world in illustrations and reference boards. And when you walk into those first fittings or a conversation with such talented actors, it really gives you a launching pad to
Mhm.
start from and grow from or stay within. And I think it depends on the actor. Like it can expand the vision, or it can help to like hone in the vision. But I definitely uh think, and what makes it so lovely is it can only be collaborative, and
Of
that's really
course.
lovely.
Yeah, no, that's the best part, right? Of that. Did you have a specific era that you really enjoyed? Because we see a bunch of different timelines in this iteration of season two. Is there one that you really had fun with in terms of designing for costumes?
Um, I had fun with all of them,
Okay.
to tell you the truth. I mean, it was really great because Kasra directed the third episode.
Mhm.
So to collaborate with him as a director was really fun. And those clothes are um incredible to do in England, for one thing,
Mhm.
when you're shooting in England, because the fabrics and your resources are so deep, right?
Mhm.
But I also love doing the 70s because I thought that the 70s was such a nice quick transition out of the TVA. It just felt so different, so much more glamorous, shall we say, than the TVA.
For sure, for sure. And you nailed the McDonald's. Like the outfits were fantastic in those. So I
Thank
love
you.
them. Um, my last question as we wrap here, I wanted to know if you had your own temp pad and you could travel anywhere and just maybe even vacation, just like, you want to pop in there, and I'd love to know where you'd like to go, especially given the background as a costume designer. I'd love to know.
Okay, so are we gonna say a place and a time?
Sure.
Okay, I would love to have done like the swinging 60s in London. Like there's so much art, music, and talent that came out of that.
There's a big boom at that point too, right? From fashion, from art, from
Oh,
music, and
that's so
yeah,
fun, and they're all colliding along with like a beatnik culture, and so many, and yeah,
that's awesome. Well, thank you again, Christine, for joining us on the Geekcentric podcast. It really means a lot. I love your work, and I can't wait to see what you do next.
thank you.
My final interview is with Kasra Farahani, production designer for Loki and director of Loki Season 2, Episode 3.
How are you doing today?
Very well, Justin. Thank you for your interest.
Well, thank you for joining this podcast, because honestly, you directed episode 3, and it is my favorite of the 4 episodes that I was able to preview, just because of how timely it was. Now, a lot of people might not know this, or they do know this, but you started out as a production designer, and specifically, you were the production designer on Loki season 1. So a lot of that world building of the TVA came from you and your team, which is probably one of the most consistent parts from season 1 to season 2, just so immersive. But with that said, I wanted to know what inspired you to step into the director's role for this episode, and how did your background in production design sort of influence your approach to directing this episode?
Thank you. Yeah, you know what? I mean, this is like a dream job to production design this show. Like if
Yeah.
for somebody like myself who's a fan of design, proper like architectural design, and I love genre design, but what I loved about Loki is it was an opportunity to really stretch our legs and flex our muscles in the like real design world in terms of architectural design. And I think it's why we are able to carve out a kind of a new feeling within the MCU. So no, it was an absolute joy to do. And in terms of directing, it's something I've always wanted to do. I've had occasion to do it a few times in the past. And in this context, it made so much sense after designing the first season, and how collaborative the team is, led by Kevin Wright and Michelle Blood on our show. They're just very inclusive, and the writers on season 1, Michael Waldron and his team, and on season 2, Eric Martin, who included me into the writers' room. Just a very collaborative, interactive process between the world building that we do in the design side of it and the world building that's done with the characters in the script. So I felt like I was kind of embedded in, and so it seemed natural, I guess. And I was gratified that Kevin suggested I do one.
Yeah, it sounds like you had a relationship with everyone. You had been working on this project, and it was just so comfortable to jump into this role. And you can see that from the way this episode very much rolls. It's just everything is so confident, and that can be said about the entire series for sure. Now, this episode, we are introduced to another variant of Kang. And I wanted to know, in your own words, how do you believe Victor Timely's character distinguishes himself different from the other Kang variants? And how do you feel this episode sort of captures telling that story?
Sure. I mean, I feel like we're all a product of nature and nurture, right? And so you've got your genes that define 50% of who you're going to be, and then the other 50%, which is a lot, is about circumstance and about when and where you were born, and who it is that's teaching you and showing you things along the way. So I think there's potential to be wildly different outcomes from the different variants. And I think that what we're seeing in this episode, without getting too far ahead of the episode, is that this is not obviously what they were expecting necessarily, and this is a very different person. And I think that what we're seeing is like a brilliant, quirky inventor who was born placed in time and born at a moment where he's ahead of the culture in which he exists. And that was kind of exacerbated by the fact that Renslayer and Miss Minutes give him this like super critical piece of technological knowledge in his adolescence, basically. And we check back in with him 25 years later and see how that's played out. And I think that like this Victor Timely for me was a reference that we discussed a lot, was Granville Woods, who's an African-American inventor from the mid 19th century, who was an electrical engineer, made many brilliant inventions that were constantly, people were trying to take credit for them and steal them. Edison twice tried to claim inventions of his as his own and lost in court both times. Ultimately ended up offering him a job, which he turned down. So this was like a big inspiration for Victor Timely for us.
Right. Awesome. Well, again, it seems like, we already met He Who Remains. It feels like Victor Timely is he who started it all, sort of, and in a lot of ways. And I love the inspiration and your direction with how you wanted to shape that character, because he seems like a bit of a con artist in some ways, but he's using, I think, to your point, where people might think they're taking from him or that he's at a disadvantage, he's using that to his advantage in the con. So I think that's really smart in describing it that way. Well, Kasra, thank you so much for joining us on the Geekcentric podcast. I look forward to seeing what you do next, my friend.
Thank you so much.
Well, that is it for our special Behind the Geeks episode for Marvel Studios Loki Season 2. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, feel free to subscribe to us wherever you listen to podcasts. And while you're at it, why don't you leave a review? Because a podcast that can provide you with glorious purpose deserves 5 stars, so we would really appreciate that. But hey, if you want to reach out to us and let us know how we're doing, if you enjoy listening to our stuff, if there's feedback you want to share with us and to make us better, well, you can do so by reaching out to us via email at wearegeekcentric@gmail.com. That's wearegeekcentric@gmail.com. You can also hit us up on the app formerly known as Twitter as @GeekcentricYT, or on Instagram or Threads at wearegeekcentric. Now, we are not done talking about Loki Season 2. We already posted our spoiler-free episode where we discussed the first 4 episodes. And usually we would do a watch club, and if you know, then you know this is where we get into all the spoilers and all the nitty-gritties about each episode. But this time around, because we were gifted 4 episodes thanks to our friends at Disney Studios Canada and Marvel Studios Canada, we actually held off on doing a watch club. So I'm happy to report, as of today, 4 episodes of Loki are out, and so too is our spoiler-filled recap discussion for Loki Season 2, episodes 1 to 4 is out now for you to enjoy. This kicks off our watch club officially for this series, as we will be doing a watch club, a traditional spoiler-filled discussion for episode 5 and episode 6. And hey, we got some guests, so you'll definitely want to check those out. Don't forget, we have a ton of other great episodes covering the latest in movies and TV shows, which you can check out on podcast feeds. And hey, if you want to watch this interview on YouTube, you can do that at our YouTube channel, youtube.com/geekcentric. We also have a ton of other interviews that we've been fortunate enough to conduct on our YouTube channel, so go check that out. We got more interviews coming. I can't say anything yet, but we got more in the pipeline, so look forward to that. Be sure to subscribe so you know when our latest videos drop. But until next time, I appreciate you, and we'll see you soon. Peace.